questions. Whoever wants to take them or ignore them, that's good. Okay? And then we'll throw it open to the audience, or else I'll just keep rolling, asking you stuff. All right, the first question, or rather statement I'm going to make is, it seems like the whole optimization industry has gone to hell because people are equating testing with conversion rate optimization. So I want to hear your take on what the role of testing is within conversion rate optimization. Are they synonymous, or what's the rest of conversion rate optimization?
When you say testing, you mean A/B testing specifically?
Split testing, yeah. We have folks from VWO, I think, here, sponsors. There's the Optimizely, there's content management systems like Unbounce that have it built in, and so on. So all the testing tool vendors are testing velocity, testing velocity, testing velocity.
Yeah.
Testing is CRO. Is that true?
Well, so it's a two-edged sword. So whatever we use that sword for, we focus on A/B testing because A/B testing really is, we call it the supreme court of data. So it is a test that is designed to tell us not only if an idea is going to work, but give us an estimate by how much. Now, the thing that happens when you A/B test is all of the things that you learn you have to do to get good at that. So you can't test everything. Even on the biggest sites, we have a limited number.
Okay, so the question isn't how to test or what to test. The question is there anything to optimization besides testing, and if so, what?
Yeah, it's all those things that help you figure out what to test.
So you're still keeping it in a testing sphere?
For us, that's kind of our value proposition.
Okay, okay, fair enough. Okay, so Rob, is there more to CRO?
Sure, I'll take a contrary view. Yeah, of course.
British always.
You could improve your CRO without ever doing a test.
Tell us how.
So also, my style of testing is not conversion focused, right? Or not conversion rate
SEO,
focused.
yeah.
I'm very much like SEO, full funnel testing. Let's get more conversions, not necessarily conversion rate. But yeah, you know, if we see there are conversion blockers here on the site, this site has a bunch of these things that I've seen Brian and Tim complain about on stage 100 times. The offer on this page, I know is not appealing to the new customers I'm driving to the site at the moment. Let's improve it. Let's get more customers. You can do longitudinal tests about this week it was one thing and this week it was another thing, and maybe this isn't an A/B test or a split test, but we see improvements. And yeah, 101 things you're going to improve that you don't need to test your way into.
Okay, very great. Isaac?
I would just add one element there. I think there is something beyond testing when it comes to conversion optimization, and that's actually implementing better versions of your pages. So it's easy to run tests. Brian had a great slide at the end showing a lot of the popular software. It's easy to get heat maps. It's easy to think of better headlines. It's easy to use Google Optimize, but then implementation, depending on what type of company structure you have, if it's like a bureaucratic, we have this with clients all the time, where we've done tests, and now it's like, okay, we need to implement these changes because that's what's going to be important, and that becomes unbelievably difficult, like getting these things done. So I think marketers have to understand that there's testing, there's implementation, and then there's just also basic understanding of marketing psychology.
Okay, so we'll go back to that. Goes back to what to test, right? Where are you saying that independent of testing?
I think independent. I think appreciating the science of a p-value is important, but ultimately, like, there is a fundamental group of best practices, let's say, or concepts of marketing psychology that could give you a good head start that a lot of marketers don't know starting off.
Okay, great. I'm going to take the really contrarian viewpoint and say that testing is a teeny tiny part of optimization. Then we'll spend the rest of the session talking about testing, okay? But I've heard people say you should never redesign your site. You should just test your way to success. And that's the same as saying we're going to go from flying a biplane to a high-performance modern jet while flying it. Yeah, no, that doesn't happen. You can't test your way to that, right? There are parts of your business that should be optimized, like your business model, like your set of offerings, things like that require input from other parts of the company. They're not about optimizing the current thing. The missed opportunity might be that you have no free trial, or you should get rid of your free trial, and those decisions are not being done at the testing level. And then finally, everybody in the company should be involved in optimization and contributing to that. And just like somebody once said, everybody in the company should be a marketer. Everybody should be optimizing the business. So the think of it as a function or a swim lane, as one of our unfortunate customers once called it. You know, like PPC is a swim lane, SEO is a swim lane, CRO is a swim lane. It's not a swim lane. It should splash across the whole pool and go all over your company. Right, so that's my...
Yeah, and I would just add to that, I think there is some crossover where you could use some of the software that Brian was mentioning to do price testing, or to see like different variants of page, whether they work better with a free trial, and then also knowing like what KPI to look at, right? So something, I think you were mentioning that you might see an overall drop in conversion rate from certain channels, or if you take away or add a free trial, but is conversion rate the most important metric to the business? It's typically profit, and that may come with getting higher quality traffic, more of it, a lower conversion rate.
Okay, let's talk about that. Let's do that. That's the next topic. What exactly are we optimizing? What kind of KPIs are appropriate to optimize? KPIs for, you know, the Alphabet Soup Challenge means key performance indicators. You know, what's on your dashboard? What can and should you optimize? And of course, you'll say nobody, by the way, on this panel is allowed to say it depends. Okay, just I know you're about to for e-commerce, it should be this, but what is the highest value kind of KPIs to optimize?
So I think for A/B testing, you should be optimizing for your bottom line KPIs. So you should be optimizing for more calls, more leads, and more sales. We don't often see a correlation, for instance, between what we call engagement metrics. So time on page, number of pages per visit. There's not a correlation across all the tests we've run between increasing that and increasing the conversion rate. In fact, a lost person on your site looks exactly like someone who's really engaged. They're trying to find where they're supposed to be, visiting a lot of pages and spending a lot of time. So we like the engagement metrics to inform and remove hypotheses. We can figure that out so that we can take the right ones to test.
Okay, Rob?
I only can give the same answer as Brian, reframed as test as far as you can.
Down the funnel.
Yeah, so if you can get to phone call, then measure that. But if you can also track that in your customer, your CRM, to whether they convert, on a $20 a month or a $2,000 a month package, then track that as well. If all you can track is engagement with content on the site, then sure, we'll do that. But I'm sure you can do better than this. So yeah, track as far as you can. And there's no one in this room who gives a shit about anything but making more money. So
anybody in this room?
No.
All right, just check.
I like looking.
Yeah.
You can't help it, baby.
It's working right. Yeah, so track as far as you can, close to the bottom line.
Isaac, anything to add?
Nothing to add after that.
Okay, well in that case, I would say go further than your bottom line, because that's just your one-time event. What do you do if you have a free trial? You really care about the lifetime value and retention and all of that. So there's a lot of companies, like we work with Shutterstock, you can buy different plans at the retail level from Shutterstock, right? But they know also the lifetime value of those. So every one of those initial sales isn't what you get that first month or that first year if it's an annual plan. It's the lifetime value. So if you should be going to your CFO and your business people and digging at the numbers that they probably have never even thought to put together. It's crazy. 80% of our clients don't know lifetime value for their products. Is that your experience as well?
At least 80%.
Yeah, it's insane. Yeah, so go be that detective that gets the numbers from the finance people. If you're big enough to have business intelligence, go say, give me a report. What's our lifetime value by product line? Or if it's changed over time, cohorts of people. Okay.
I just wanted to add to that one point you mentioned earlier about having a team. As PPC and SEO and these different solutions become more automated over the next 5 to 10 years, and we're moving towards more automation, it's important that agencies and even marketers within companies have a consultative head on their shoulders, where they can go and discuss things at a broader level. It's like, okay, well maybe our overall product can be improved. How do we stretch more revenue from our customers? This idea of having a free trial, not having a free trial. Should we try to sell this first before this?
Has anybody was in Melanie's session, just the previous session in the track one room? Anybody? Yeah, so she was talking about content silos, right? So really fight the silos and be that cross-disciplinary person that jumps out of your silo.
Yeah, and in our agency, we're doing a lot of, much more now than before, sitting down with clients and helping them figure out, what is your LTV? How does your LTV change under different market conditions? And that's a value add you wouldn't think of necessarily as a conventional digital agency. That might be in the past more under the canopy of a business consultant. but I think it's important and a really valuable skill for agencies to be able to
Yeah,
incorporate.
I'll give you a perfect example. We had a client sells high-ticket items online to consumers, but some of them a few $100s, some tens of thousands of dollars. Well, guess what we did for them? We trained their sales force, the people that answer the phone calls. Conversion rate on the site stayed unchanged, but phone sales jumped up 15%. That's multi-million dollars to them, right? So what's broken isn't necessarily your website. It could be your email sequences. It could be your call center. So that's all optimization as far as I'm concerned. So back to that, just before we go deeper into testing, you shouldn't need to test. Just do it. Okay. Then there's stuff you test, and then there's big projects like redesign your site, layer on personalization, have some kind of omni-channel experience where you're tracking people across every touch point. Those are not things you're going to test into. So big strategic projects, separate track for tactical testing, and then the just do it stuff. And how much of it falls into just do it? Do you need the crutch of testing, and how often?
So one of the things that I think happens when you start using more testing in your organization is you get humbled. We used to recommend a lot of best practices. We don't really do best practices anymore because we've tested our best ideas and they don't work. And I was looking at that because, I'm sorry, what was the original question?
Well, what falls into the you don't have to test it category? How much of this stuff?
I think the number of things your ability to make decisions creatively is going to shrink a little bit if you don't have some data, but I think it's going to make you very good at going out and finding inexpensive ways to get that data rather than A/B testing everything. An experimenting culture is really what we're talking about, not necessarily an A/B testing culture.
This is a fascinating question. So for context, the way Distill got into a lot of the A/B testing is from our SEO background. So we built the Distill ODN to let us do this testing to say, when we made a change to a site, to templates, did we get more search traffic or less search traffic or the same amount of search traffic? Because this wasn't possible beforehand. And now we've learned a bunch of stuff, not just about testing, but about SEO as well. And we thought a few things. We thought, one, there's going to be a bunch of best practice that just works every time, because we know it's been the best practice because we've been doing it forever. And we've been recommending it forever. And two, we thought we'd be able to isolate a bunch of things and try new stuff and find the new things that no one knew worked. Now we can roll these same changes out to everyone. And the first thing we found was that most of the best practice stuff either doesn't work or doesn't work as well as it was supposed to. All of these bits of advice from a decade of doing SEO in different ways on different sites. It's like, damn, we've been recommending stuff that is at best not helping. And it's
So it's humbling, like Brian said.
it makes the last few years very embarrassing. The other part was we hoped we would have all of these this battery of tests where we just roll out just do it things like we know these work every time. This kind of schema markup or this kind of type of tag change or this kind of fix. Nope, we've tested something and we roll it out to a site and see a 15% uplift in traffic. And it's like, oh my god, we just made so much money. And then we roll it out to another site and see a 5% drop in traffic. It's like, what is going on? So it's a bit frustrating that nothing makes sense, everything's different, it changes all the time, and we have very few just do it type things in them.
Okay, Isaac?
Yeah, so I would add to that, and Jacob Nielsen has a law with conversion optimization that I like to repeat that says most people spend most of their time on the web on websites that aren't yours. And what he's trying to convey with that is if most other websites are doing a certain thing, unless you have an unbelievably strong reason to not do it, then don't do it and don't bother testing it. Like for example, if you have where should your logo be on your page, right? There's a convention. Upper left. Where should the cart be, right? So these are all simple things, right? And you could test those things. You could go into Google Optimize and test where your cart icon appears. But if most other sites are doing, these are web conventions, so you should have an enormous respect for web conventions, and that's basically what most other sites are
A
doing.
community of people have agreed on something, and 99% of the time is being spent with that model in their head.
Exactly.
So unless yours is 10 times better,
And you're sure of that, and that there's a really compelling reason to break a convention, just start off with not breaking conventions. I would just personally put anything that's a convention into right away into the bucket of just do it. I agree that I think as experimenters you have to be very willing and almost interested in being wrong about your own opinions. Right? And you have to have, I'm always talking about this from a client approach, this is what I do. I say, you try to convert your clients into people also willing to be wrong or to forego, let's say, their own aesthetic preferences. But just when it comes to testing, let's say, different variants of the page or different funnels or different, price elasticity testing, I would recommend going big. Like, so you can test like a little headline, you can test colors. Small things will tend to have small impacts. But if you take an overall structure, right, and then you test it against another overall structure, that could be a free trial versus a not free trial. That could be, we just did this for a company that sells portable oxygen concentrators online. They spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a month on traffic. And we were sending them to a really long page, long form copy, a lot of information, great images. And this was a page that was developed over time that increased the conversion rate. And then we tested it against a page that had just really short, compelling copy. I think I'm speaking about this case study tomorrow in my lecture. It had 87% fewer words, no images, and the conversion rate went up by 50%, which represented a large financial impact to the company.
Okay, so I want to touch on two things there. One is that how to structure a split test. And is anyone doing multivariate testing? Is anyone from Booking.com here? No, I'm just kidding. So multivariate testing is great for high data rates. Most of us probably don't have it, so I'm going to largely restrict this to what's useful to folks in the room, which is split testing. Assuming a split testing framework, it doesn't have to be just A/B, it can be multiple versions. I think what you said is important. You have some tactical small changes, this usability tweak, a slightly better headline, but you keep the structure the same, and then a swing for the fences, complete redesign of the page or process. And both have to be in the test. You want kind of the surety of maybe locking in some small wins, and this one might be a spectacular failure, or it could be huge. So don't just do small tweaks. Have some, take some risks.
I always say that a spectacular failure in testing is not a spectacular failure, right? It's a win. Like, you learn for sure that this is not going to work, and now we're going to try something different. So, like, I don't know, I'm not necessarily the most optimistic person in general, but I really believe that if you run a test and it does not outperform your control, it's not a loss. It was a good test.
What's the someone will tell me who's the quote? I haven't failed to do it. I found 3,000 ways it don't work.
Yeah, exactly. Edison, perhaps?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it was definitely an
So
experiment.
Brian, how should you treat kind of heterogeneity in the test? Like, how conservative, how wild, what mix of those? What's your approach to that?
So I've got all these tests swimming around in my head, a little availability bias happening, but when you see something, for instance, like changing the words in the site-wide nav on an e-commerce site, you would think that would be relatively low impact. But it turns out it can have a massive impact on the overall conversion rate, even if the number of people clicking on the navigation doesn't change. So it's an important part of the value proposition, and we found out with at least one client. So that's something that's a small impact that had a big change. And so the more that those swim around, the less confident I am at making a sweeping generalization about.
I guess what I'm saying is, how do you have a range of risks in the test? Is that an appropriate concept? Should you have what you think are conservative things with what you think are kind of fundamental changes? Should you mix those in a test, or should you kind of have them all be similar? I will try 5 different headlines. That's the test.
So oftentimes the words really do matter, especially in lead generation sites. So those headlines, finding the right words, absolutely we would just test headlines in that sort of situation.
All right, you take that question back, or?
Sure. We have a unique issue in SEO testing in particular, where you have a really bad UX or conversion rate test, you turn it off. With SEO testing, there's always the risk that now a bunch of pages are indexed with bad information, bad content. They can be. What we've found recently, though, is that we've been, I think Google's getting good at this. We've been very lucky to be doing all this at a time when we turn on the test, we see impacts in rankings, and we've tested then turning it off and seeing everything come back, which has been which has been good. Like we're not worrying about swinging for the fences. We had a test a few weeks ago where we had a client, they were a big home electronics retailer, so there's a bunch of stuff like buying microwaves online, buying refrigerators online. Well, obviously you're buying online, you're on our website, so we took the word online out of all of these title tags, and traffic tanked, rankings went way down. Like, great job Google. Like, you couldn't figure out that people were buying this online. Terrified, after a week we put it back, everything popped back within a day or so. So yeah, it makes us more confident about swinging for the fence.
And if I could just tell a quick story about a test that we ran recently, it goes back to this idea of like the non-swim lane approach to marketing. I think that just overall business acumen is really important, and you don't see it stressed enough with marketers in the industry. Like, I think that just reading good books or good content just about overall business is as important, if not more important, than the declarative procedural knowledge, like how to run an actual test. Just as an example, one of our clients is the International Culinary Center, culinary school in the city in New York. And I'd say 90% of their traffic comes from PPC. Okay, so I'm going to set the stage, and maybe we can have some suggestions on why this test failed. We followed all the best practices. We did all the usability. We designed a much nicer looking landing page for their PPC traffic, trying to get people to submit a sales form for more enrollment information for one of their culinary programs. The original landing page that they came to us was ugly, as bare bones. It looked like it was totally unprofessionally made. Content was in the wrong places. There was no social proof. It just looked like a floating page in the middle of nowhere. And our design was much better. It looked like their main site. It had all the production quality of a high quality site, and the conversion rate dropped significantly. And we were wondering, like we were scratching our heads, like, well, from a conversion rate experimentation perspective, we did everything right. So I think this is where, like, this idea of just being able to think outside the box and to come up with theories that you're not necessarily sure you're right about that you can go and test. So we had a theory why our conversion rate dropped from an objectively better user experience. So if anybody wants to throw out a hypothesis why that might have happened, it's an interesting case study, I think.
Just give us the answer.
Just give the answer. So our theory was when people came from a PPC campaign to this landing page, they felt and they understood that it was a page that was disconnected from the site, and they might not necessarily be able to find it again. Like it sort of looked and felt like a squeeze page that might only be attached to a PPC ad. And then if they came back to the International Culinary's main site, they wouldn't be able to navigate to this page. And the new landing page looked much more professional. It looked like the main site, and we thought that if a person landed on that page, there might have been just a natural assumption. It took away this manufactured urgency that the lower quality page had. And when they came to a better looking landing page, that urgency was gone. It was, okay, I can fill out this form now, or I can just find this form later tonight. And we actually we used Usability Hub to ask people that very question. If you came to this page from an ad, and we actually showed them a picture of a Google ad, imagine you clicked it, you came to this page, and we asked them, do you think you'd be able to find this page again easily? And a lot of people said, well, this looks like a page that is like a landing page for an ad campaign.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so that was an interesting case study.
I want to talk about the dirty little secret. Testing has real costs, right? Because when we cavalierly say, well, you should test that, you should test everything. I mean, the way that part of this course I have on setting up a testing program will be out soon, incidentally, on video, so reach out to me if you want it, is the notion that testing has a cost, and there's a certain threshold and a burden that has to be met before you test something. So for example, let's just say your win rate on tests is 25%. A lot of companies are a lot lower. 50%, you're probably doing great, right, as a company, consistently? Yeah.
We're not testing.
You're probably not testing right.
Yeah, okay, but so let's say it's 25%. There's a real cost to coming up with the ideas, developing the test plan, implementing it, QAing it, collecting the data, putting the winning version live on your site clean without any of the boogers of the testing tool in it, right? And so if you do all that, let's say that the cost of that is 10 grand, and a quarter of your tests are successful. That means you have to recoup $40,000 and to make a test worthwhile. And if your test isn't passing that hurdle, if you can't possibly make $40,000 with that test, you shouldn't be doing it. So along with that is the question of when should you stop testing, or when your ideas get worse? How many times do you test the same page? Are you actually using the economic calculations to determine determine whether to test something. I want to hear about that.
Yeah, so where I wanted to go with that question was, I'm just not, I'm not following, because you introduced something that
Again, sorry, I was rambling. Do you want to come back to you?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a cost to testing, and how do you take that into account?
It sounds like you were talking mostly about the opportunity cost, right? We're going to run
No, direct cost of running tests, and the fact that the majority of them will be okay, fine, not failures, learning experiences.
Yeah, you gotta make some money afterwards.
I mean, we've had clients, right, that just said, the testing folks tell us we're making all this money, but it's not on our bottom line, and I know I paid them $500,000 in salaries this year. That's a real fucking cost. So they lost us money. If you want to keep your job, if you want to be the hero, you have to actually make money. And so what does that say about?
It comes back to some of your LTV questions, right?
Right, well, the importance of the threshold to which you subject your tests. Financial thresholds.
Yeah, no.
Anybody do that in the audience?
So first of all, if you have a high average order value business, like if every sales expense, we do lead generation for these treatment centers, every time somebody hits a bed, it's tens of thousands of dollars. You're going to find faster ROI, and you can more justify that. If you have more traffic and you can get through ideas faster, that's just going to increase your cost according to your component of it. And so,
well, again, not the cost of traffic or the opportunity cost of losing money during the test, not during data collection. I'm talking about the hard cost of setting up a test.
yeah, we actually put a price on it that is, it's a little bit higher than what the price we would put on it, but an internal team trying to get it done, I can see it costing that much.
I found another way to refute Tim's position.
Good.
If you're talking about paying the salaries of people doing tests, then we're not talking about the test cost. You're either firing them or keeping them around to do tests for the rest of the year. So they're going to be doing a bunch of tests, right? And we just want to do as many successful tests as possible and see as much uplift as possible, unless you're talking about using them in different ways.
No, I'm still saying, I don't know if I could make this concept clear. You need to subject each test to if it's successful, how much money can we make standard? And that's got to be above your average cost of successful tests.
So if anybody's around tomorrow at 10:30, I'm giving a lecture, and during the lecture I'm giving out a template that is built to do exactly what Tim is describing. So it prospectively and retrospectively analyzes the exact financial impact of a test based on an improved conversion rate and your lifetime value of the customer. And you can also input the costs of that test. And the costs come in many different forms, so that you could be paying people salaries to run tests, that's their job. You can be paying an agency like clients pay us to run tests.
Tool licensing costs are real.
Software is real, yeah. I mean, as a business scales, the cost of testing becomes more expensive. And I would push back on the premise a little bit, because there are a lot of tests that could be run where you can get those incremental wins, where you don't need to have corporate buy-in to totally restructure a business operation. From an operational perspective, you can test headlines, you can test different designs and copy, relatively low cost. But you should still know those costs, and there should still be an input and there's an output. You should know if you're doing this inside a company, or if you're ever doing this for a client, if you want to be a compelling marketer, you should be able to go to your client and say, listen, you're going to pay us X amount of dollars to run these series of tests for you. We need to increase conversion rate by X%, or figure out how we're going to increase our LTV by X% to even break even. So we know now the benchmark, we know the waterline. If we're falling short, we've lost money on the test. If we're beyond this point, it was worth it, and our ROI is going to be Y. And it's a simple Excel template. And if you're not going to be here tomorrow, just email me, and I'll be happy to send it to you.
I think that this is a common thread that I've heard in several of the presentations already today, and I'll probably continue tomorrow. The only language that senior executives speak is money. Money. They just understand the money language. So if you start talking money, then you're going to get more of their respect and the seat at the grown-up table, not the little kids table. Okay. Oh yeah. Conversion rate. Yeah. Blah blah blah. Hypotheses. Null hypotheses even. So that's not going to be the thing that gets your testing program to grow.
Yeah, and people hire us for that. They're like, all right, show us the calculator that shows us, what does the 10% look like? Show us much profit we're going to be making.
Right.
It wraps me around the ass a little bit though, because we have clients that work with us 4 years and 5 years and 6 years, and they stay with us for a completely different set of reasons. And it is having someone to go to whenever they have a question. We've had a client ask us if they could give us some feedback on billboards outside the road. Can you tell us which billboard is most likely to be seen and remembered? And we're able to get some interesting data from usability actually to show that their design didn't make any difference. So, you know, the cost is something you have to, if you're introducing it, it's something you have to address. But hopefully you get to a point where the perceived and more subtle benefits of being an experimenting organization take over. And I think that's what happens with our.
Okay, so let's switch gears to that. It's a risk thing, right? There are a lot of companies that are very risk averse, and that's off brand for us. We can't do negative messaging. You'll hear about that in my keynote. We heard about it from Nancy. We heard about it from you, right? Like pain works as a motivator, but we can't say that there's pain, right? There's all of these things that you're constraining your organization that are essentially limits on what you can do as testing. Our CMS sucks and it's brittle, right? We can't add extra SKUs to try new offers. You know, we can't use messaging on the site. Let's talk about how to operate within all of those constraints in the company.
Well, fire your clients, get a new job. The first two, let's just get those right off.
Okay, well you're an
You can't
agency,
work.
okay? The in-house people can't fire their clients, they work for them.
Yeah, they can work somewhere else, but you know, there's a point where if you're woke and you get it, having an organization where you can make a difference is like that. We'll just take it off the table. We don't need to talk about that. I don't think very much.
Well, but the reality is that all organizations aren't highly functional, so they have these
Most of
constraints. So what are the most common kind of constraints you run into in terms of being able to do effective tests?
Getting information on long-term value, like valuing, having a model for valuing a lead. It's a little easier with sale, but sale is not 100% profit if you're an e-commerce site. Those are the biggest issues. And if you can get a process in place that's at least consistent, if not completely accurate, that's half the battle.
Using conservative assumptions, dig for the financials, and work backwards to build the value of a front-end event.
Yeah, and if you can get a signal from your website into the CMS so that you can grade those leads, those little things are big wins, but the silos are killers.
Okay.
The original question here was about blockers to run tests.
Yeah, what are the most common kind of things in an organization that prevent you from being effective with testing?
You talked a bit about risk aversity and possibly some misaligned values and everything else as well. But you also mentioned brittle CMSs. I love a brittle, terrible old CMS. We originally built the distilled ODN just to deal with this as a layer of like, you've got a terrible CMS that you can't do anything with. Now you can do things. We fixed CMSs as a layer, but then we realized, oh, we can test all these things. So we already had the platform that was ready to run testing. So we moved back to it from that direction. So yeah, I love an organization that's got an enterprise CMS that was built in-house 15 years ago. Lead gen for us. So we find this with the SEO and the CRO testing side, that there is a hurdle where you're saying install software like ODN or Optimizely or something else.
Or something as basic as a drop a pixel on your site.
Or get GTM installed. Because then we're going to be able to get a bunch of stuff done, and we're going to be able to do testing. And there's people in the organization who hear, wait, so all of those things which used to have layers and layers of organizational sign-off to do, suddenly you've got one SEO guy or one design guy who can now just make changes through the Optimizely front end or through the VW front end. And,
tag manager.
Exactly, yeah. And that's terrifying to some people. So we've had to work within the institutional boundaries of, okay, let's have a proper sign-off process on tests we want to run. Let's make sure that the people who need to buy into this are in the room when, if not the decisions of what we're going to test are made, but the decision to ship this next test and the next test.
Isaac?
So I've been doing this for about 5 or 6 years, and I found that 3 specific things really cut straight to the through the bureaucratic process, so to speak, like a steak knife. And those are, and this is, I think the advice is, in my mind, the advice is the same whether you're an agency or you're an in-house marketer, because you're going to run into these bureaucratic issues, trying to get enough a consensus for running tests. One is to talk money, right? So we'll never send out a proposal without, we'll never talk like, I think we could increase the conversion rate of our website by 30% if we do X, Y, and Z, right? It's like just the money. So if we increase it, this is exactly how much either additional leads or sales we make a day, or how much revenue we're making a day, or how much we could pull back on our ad spend, let's say, and keep the revenue the same. However you want to frame it, it's always money. The second thing is stress that you don't need them to do it, right? You don't need the CEO, you don't need the CMO. You have the tools. Maybe I need this code drop in Google Tag Manager, but our team's going to take care of it. So if you're an in-house marketer or an agency, we don't need your time. The third thing, and this is really important, is do something first. Whether if it costs you $50 to run a usability test on your own, do it without the client's knowledge. Take 2 screenshots, run a side-by-side comparison, show them that you've spent $75, and the data indicates that this is a clear headline, and subsequently you get more time on site. And then go and try to get that buy-in after you've taken that first initial step. Stress that you don't need their involvement, you don't need their time. It's not going to be a stress on their head. And then frame the program in bottom line revenue. I think if you hit on all those 3 things, you'll have a much better job at getting through.
Okay, so we're kind of inside the...
So I was going to add something to the first of your 3 points there, the money. Don't talk in reviews as a hack a bunch for winning work and upselling things what people do. Don't talk about daily revenues and uplifts and all this kind of thing. I can tell someone we're going to make you, if all this works out, we'll make you $10,000 a day. By the end of next year, you're going to make an extra $5 million in revenue.
No, always make the number bigger, but annualize it.
And also when they're looking at the price they're going to pay us, they're like, oh yeah, that clearly pays off.
Because it is the gift that keeps on giving, unless you're doing something seasonal or product launch stuff. If it's steady state on a working business, then it'll continue to be that uplift, right?
That's interesting.
Okay. You'll definitely annualize or even lifetime value your value. Okay, so let's stay inside the organization. Where should the optimization team report to have maximum impact? Or let me put it another way, what executive air cover do you need to be effective?
I think it's coming from 2 directions. Number 1, are you the troublemaker in the organization, or are you trying to encourage the troublemakers? Most of the most effective clients we have, we're dealing with someone who's at the head of the P&L, so the head of the business, or they're at the head of the P&L, and it almost doesn't matter if we're reporting to marketing or to someone else. Where we have the most trouble, as I would say, is when we are reporting to marketing, because there's the web people, the SEO people are different, the PPC people are different, and the sales organization is different. They become very siloed. So if I was a leader in an organization, where do the troublemakers fit most? Right now, growth teams are a rage in smaller organizations because they're independent. But where could you put this team that would give it a support and an independence role? Yeah. Opportunity to bust silos. I really think that to your earlier point, testing can test so much more than how well your website is doing. That I think that if you're the CEO or COO, you want that team of experimenters or that resource reporting directly to you. I really do.
So I'm hearing as high up as possible.
That's what I would say. Yes.
It's a long-winded way of saying it depends.
Makes me sound smart, doesn't it?
The only nuance I can add to as high as possible would be wherever in the org all the KPIs meet at once, where everyone aligns. I think we've talked about a client I had years ago where I was brought in originally just on the SEO side, and we made a bunch of changes to this site and saw massive improvements. SEO traffic went from being like 10% of what they did to 50% of their traffic in pretty short order. And the SEO team were super happy, and they were hitting all their KPIs. The conversion team, the folks responsible for UX and CRO, were pissed because conversion rates across the site had gone from like 10% to 5%, because all that strong PPC traffic that was driven was converting really highly. All the SEO traffic converted relatively poorly. They have a lot more conversions now. They have like almost twice as many conversions,
but lower conversion
rate. So they're looking at a the UX team like, oh, you're not pulling your weight. This is crazy. And busting out of silos and making sure that the right person is, which
is we're making more money.
There was a marketing director or maybe marketing who was responsible for this pyramid approach.
It's all good, right?
Right, yeah. It's like, okay, we'll split out we'll look at your analytics properly. Yes, you've increased conversion rate on each channel. It's just that because of the whatever the effect's called.
The traffic mix changed. This is much higher volume of crappier traffic, but overall we're making more money. Yeah.
I have nothing to add.
Okay, great. I'm going to ask you guys to each give me one thing to avoid when doing your testing program. Okay, just 30 seconds, and then we're headed to the expo hall after that.
When it finally does take, when your organization gets it, don't set MBOs on the number of tests you run a month.
Amen.
All right, when you start doing that, you're just going to test anything, and they're going to be getting the tests out by the end of the month, at the end of the quarter, to meet their MBOs, and it will taint your effectiveness.
Don't spend too much time on academic masturbation and trying to figure out why some tests worked. We've talked about internally in this field recently about we're not doing science, we're doing business, and we've had some tests with incredible uplift, and I can't figure out why, and I'm not going to waste too much more time trying to figure it out.
Okay, learnings are not as important as money.
Sometimes we haven't learned much, we've just made a bunch of money. So,
by the way, show of hands, who thinks that academic masturbation said with an English accent is really cool? Okay, me too. Okay, yeah.
Sorry, I'll find a better euphemism.
No, it's perfect. Isaac.
Those were two good ones. One thing to really avoid. We touched upon a lot of the things of,
avoid testing things that are conventional. But I think just for the hell of it, I'm going to take the opposite approach of the intellectual masturbation. I'm going to say that it is worthwhile if you could create a database of things that have worked in the past and understand why they've worked. You might not implicitly be able to apply them in every other business, because every other business is different, of course, so on and so forth. But I do think that if you could come up with sound theories and just an understanding of user psychology, marketing psychology, business psychology, why certain things ended up being better, like the example I gave in the culinary center. It was good to understand why that was happening, because then it will inform future tests in other business environments. It might not be in a linear way, but in some way I think it will be valuable. So I would say learnings could be very valuable.
And then I would say, piggyback off of that, don't throw away a whole avenue of pursuit based on a single example. For example, we tried scarcity, it didn't work. Okay, well, that's because you had it in fine print below the button. If you just say countdown clock, motion activated above the button, yeah, scarcity might work. So don't just give up on scarcity. We tried it, it didn't work in this context. Go try some different versions of that same idea, I guess. So, all right, well, I'm afraid we are out of time. This is also the close of day one, so we're having